wouldn't an American lawmaker say to a client state, you're not allowed to spy on us? I'm sorry, I know why you want to. I'm not mad at you, but you're not allowed to.
Sure.
And I don't care for it. I don't want to be spied on by you. It's kind of weird not to say that, but you don't seem able to say that.
Sure, I would say don't spy on us. They're going to anyway.
If another country's central intelligence wants to spy on you, they're going to, in some way, shape, or form, spy on you.
Senator, thank you very much for spending the time to have this conversation.
It's good to be with you.
So you've come out for regime change in Iran, as distinct just from taking out the nuclear sites. What does regime change look like in Iran?
Somebody else in charge.
How do you get there?
Look, that ultimately has to be a popular uprising from the people. And it's not a complicated question. Is America better off with a country that has a leader who hates us and wants to kill us? Or to have a country with a leader who likes us and wants to be friends with us. And
definitely the latter's better.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so that's not a complicated statement. Look.
So this video has been trending recently, and I had to watch it, bro. I had to watch it. I don't know if this one can get no views, but I don't care. I don't know too much about the Israel-Iran stuff. I've intentionally stayed away from it because I try to make sure my stuff is purely, and I don't know if I'm saying this the right way, but purely American, if that makes sense. Even though this does kind of involve America, but I try to, you guys get what I'm saying. You guys get what I'm saying. Nonetheless, I had to do this one because tensions are rising. This is something I can't like not talk about anymore. So let's get into it.
Look, I believe you look across the world at when you have countries that have dictators that are viciously anti-America. Venezuela, Maduro hates us. Would we be better off with Maduro out of power? Absolutely. I want our enemies out of power and I want our friends in power.
I could not agree more. The question is, how do you get there?
Of course.
And we've been trying to kill Maduro for quite some time. We have troops there. As you know.
I don't know that we've been trying to kill Maduro.
We have. Oh. And I think you know that. And
okay, I don't know that.
Okay, well, as a statement of fact, we have. So
we do have massive sanctions. We tried to pressure him out of office.
Yeah,
I'm not aware of efforts.
I'm just saying there's a lot of pressure coming from various parts of the U.S. government on that government, and it's still there.
Yeah.
Same, the country of our ancestors, Cuba, 1959, we've been working on that. Hasn't worked. So it's. I think we both agree it's hard to do.
It absolutely is hard. And look, I think you're reasonable to ask, how do we produce that? And I think there's a distinction between what your objective is and the means to get it. There are all sorts of things I would say we would be better off. We'd be better off in China without Xi there. Should we invade China and topple Xi? Of course not.
Better off with no national debt.
There are lots of things.
Totally.
But it's good to say, all right, what are our objectives?
Right.
And so with the Ayatollah in Iran, saying you're for regime change, I don't view as complicated. I mean, the guy literally leads mobs chanting death to America. Mm-hmm. So that's not good.
Definitely not good. But the reason I think it's important to get a little more detailed about how that might happen is because there's military action in progress, which we're supporting. And the president has said clearly, including last night, that he is focused on eliminating the capacity of the Iranian government to produce nuclear weapons. You are saying we need to use military force to effect regime change.
I have not said that.
Oh, I must have.
No, I have not said that once. Okay. I don't think we need to use military force.
So if you guys are unaware of what's happening, Ted Cruz is a Republican senator, and he is very, very pro-Trump in this administration, meaning that he supports things that Trump also supports, I guess, or he says he does, and he's on the Republican side in Congress. So what Tucker Carlson is trying to do is, Tucker Carlson's kind of not really super red Republican anymore, I guess, and Ted Cruz is. So he's asking him questions on what's going on with this conflict, if he can get some answers from it. And Ted Cruz is like, I never said that. I don't know who you heard that from. Apparently, this joint's gonna get pretty good, so I'm looking forward to it. I hope they argue a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
Forced to do regime change. I said I support it. I would like to see it happen. You asked me how should it happen? A popular uprising. What I've advocated for. All right, let's step back a second. You and I, we've known each other a long time. I would say we agree on about 80% of the things on Earth.
For sure.
And there are a lot of things, and we can get into the nitty-gritty of foreign policy as much as you want. There are a lot of things on which you and I agree, not just a little bit, but violently.
Well, I totally agree. I was rooting for you in your last campaign, for sure.
Well, thank you. Look, you have been heroic on the border. You've been one of the clearest and best voices in the whole country on securing the border and on the absolute crisis we're facing. And in Texas, I see it and live it every day. In COVID, in fact, you may recall in the middle of the COVID lockdown, I was out walking my dog when the whole world was shut down and we were living in lunatic times. And I called you and said, Tucker, your nightly monologues are the single best thing on television. Like I watch them like an injection of crack. Okay, I'm mixing my metaphor because you don't inject crack, but you get what I'm saying.
Try.
No, I mean, you were standing up and speaking like, what the hell are we doing, in a way that we desperately, desperately needed. And so whether it's securing the border, whether it's the insanity of COVID lockdowns and the vaccine mandates, whether it is the Second Amendment or the First Amendment, you and I agree on a ton of stuff. The 20% where we disagree, I do think is meaningful. And it's mostly in the foreign policy space. And what I would say, if you'll allow me to get a little theoretical, and then I'm happy to get specific.
Yes.
For a long time, people had perceived two different poles of Republican foreign policy. There have been interventionists, and those have been people like John McCain and Lindsey Graham and George W. Bush. And there have been isolationists. And the most prominent of those have been Ron Paul and Rand Paul, and there are others. And people perceive those are the two choices. You got to be one or the other. I've always thought both were wrong. I don't agree with either one. The way I view my own foreign policy...
I'm with you, by the way, for whatever it's worth. Yeah. I agree with you.
Okay, good.
I don't know who set up that binary, but there are lots of choices, actually.
I mean, people sort of naturally fall into... I think they want to classify people, and they're like, okay, you're one or the other, and you got to be all or nothing. And the intervention...
When they gonna start arguing? I saw the clip on TikTok, bro. I think they're building up to it, though. Because one thing that Ted Cruz said that I don't know if y'all peeped it, but he said, I agree with you on 80% of everything. That's like a really soft way of saying that 20% of what you saying is straight BS. That's a soft way of saying it. I don't know if y'all peeped that. But this show gonna get turned up. And I'm gonna watch it.
It seems have never seen a country they didn't want to invade, and that doesn't make any sense to me. And the isolationists, I think, don't take the threats to America seriously. And I think that's naive and it doesn't work. And so my view, I consider myself a third point on the triangle. And what I describe that as is that I am a non-interventionist hawk, which sounds a little weird, but what do I mean by that? I mean the central touch point for U.S. foreign policy and for any question of military intervention should be the vital national security interest of the United States. How does this make America safer? How does this protect Americans? If it does, we should be strong. And actually, another way of conceiving what I'm saying, I'm speaking theoretically, but Reagan referred to it as peace through strength. And actually, I think Donald Trump's foreign policy is very much what I'm describing, a non-interventionist hawk, where he understands that, and I think this is historically true, the best way to avoid war is being strong. That weakness and isolationism, I think, encourages war. So going back to regime change, where you started in Iran.
I don't think I disagree with anything you've said, so we may not be that far apart, really, because you said that the single criterion for making decisions about America's foreign policy is America's national interest.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah. Which is also America first. That's another way of putting that as well. I
think it's the definition of it.
Yeah. From what you've said publicly, I think on Iran in particular, you and I disagree. And, all right, let me contrast it when Obama was president. When Obama was president, you remember he talked about wanting to have military action against Syria.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I tried to keep an open mind to it. I said, okay, let me listen to the commander-in-chief, describe to me how this is in America's interest, and what your plan is. And Bashar Assad...
Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think, and I really hope we don't. Because who wants a war? War, people get sent off, people pass away. I don't want that. Especially if, it's avoidable. Sometimes conflict is necessary. It even goes back to biblical times. Sometimes conflict is necessary. but it's not something that I wake up and just want to happen. Nonetheless, do you guys think we're headed that way? Be honest. Do you guys think we're headed on that path where it's inevitable, where we just can't avoid it? Or do you guys think that, no, this is nonsense, this is just propaganda that they're spewing, that we're going to have one? Me personally, I don't know. I stay out of these conflicts on purpose. I try to stay purely America, because when it gets to like overseas things and international problems, that I'm not no politician. I've said that time and time again. I'm not getting into too deep into that, but let's continue.
Was a bad guy. He was killing his own citizens, and he had chemical weapons that were very dangerous. I could conceive of a commander-in-chief laying out a plan for, okay, we're going to go in and say, grab the chemical weapons and leave. Like, I could see that if there was a real threat to America and there was a plan to prevent that, I could see supporting that. So I wanted to hear what he had to say. And I listened both in classified briefings and public questioning. And number one, their public defense of it was incoherent. So John Kerry said, we're going to engage in an unbelievably small strike. I think that's a quote. I'm like, okay, and to do what? At the time, there were 9 major rebel Islamic groups in Syria. I'm like, okay, I agree, Bashar Assad's a bad guy. You topple him. And one of the 9 other groups takes over. 7 of them were affiliated with radical Islamic terrorism. You had Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra. I'm like, wait, how is it better to have lunatics who hate us in charge? Assad's a bad guy, but I don't want worse guys in charge. Obama administration couldn't give an answer to that. And ultimately, when you press them, John Kerry in particular, I pressed, and he would say, well, we need to defend international norms. Like, what the hell's an international norm? I don't know what it is, but I'm not interested in putting U.S. servicemen and women in harm's way to defend one.
Amen.
So I opposed the Syria attack and opposed it vocally. And it was interesting. Rand and I agreed. Rand's a friend of mine, but we agreed with that position for different reasons. What I was asking is I think the question we should ask, how does this make America safer? The Obama administration couldn't give me an answer, so I opposed it. I think Iran is very different.
Let me ask what you think of how Syria wound up, because Bashar al-Assad now lives in Moscow.
Yeah.
He was taken out by our allies, and he's been replaced by a radical Islamist who was affiliated with ISIS. So is that a win or no?
Unclear. Look, Syria's a mess, so I've consistently opposed.
But we had a secular leader in a religious and ethnically diverse country. Now we have a religious extremist, Islamic religious extremist, who's overseeing the purge of Christians and Alawites. Is that better? That doesn't seem like a win.
One of the things you said is you said he was taken out by our allies. I don't think that's right. Israel didn't take Assad out. What happened, and I'll tell you.
What about Turkey?
Turkey didn't take him out. So it was interesting. I had a long...
How did Assad get kicked out?
Yeah. When Netanyahu was in D.C. a couple of months ago, he and I sat down for a couple of hours. He's a good friend of mine. And we talked actually about Syria. He made an interesting point that I've not heard anywhere else, in that he said he believes what toppled Assad was when Israel took out Nasrallah. Nasrallah was the head of Hezbollah, and they took him out. And he made an interesting point. He said, it's fascinating how a charismatic leader, and Bibi said, look, Nasrallah was a very effective terrorist leader. And when they took him out, that power base was supporting Assad. And that ultimately, in Bibi's analysis, removed the support from Assad and toppled him. But they weren't trying to take out Assad. My view now, I don't know.
So you don't think that, and I don't, it is very confusing, and I don't know that anyone really knows all the details, but you don't think that Israel or Turkey, our NATO ally Turkey, played any role in toppling Assad?
I don't know. I don't know that they did. Look, my understanding of that, they clearly took out Nasrallah and Hezbollah. They've decimated Hezbollah, but Hezbollah was waging war on them. So decimating Hezbollah was very good for Israel and very good for America, too. I mean, Hezbollah hated us. I would put Assad in the category of an unintended consequence, and whether it's good or bad, I don't know. I think time will tell.
For the United States.
Yeah, for the United States. I think time will tell.
One thing I do like about Tucker Carlson's interview style is that he opens all of his interviews just by asking a plethora of questions. And what I mean by that is he doesn't necessarily push an opinion out too early. He wants to hear the person he's interviewing talk more about what they believe is right, what they think is right or not right. And here's what I say. I don't know much about this topic. I don't know if Ted Cruz is right or wrong. Don't know. I have no idea. But I do like that Tucker Carlson is letting him explain certain things. Like, okay, now we can see where he stands as the audience as well. And then eventually he's going to get into how he feels about the things that he's saying and how he looks at the outlook on what will happen if America goes this direction under Trump, or are we better under Obama with this, so on and so forth.
The new leadership there, you're right to be concerned. Let me step back and let's talk regime change generally. I mentioned Syria. I also oppose the Iraq War. I think the Iraq War was a serious mistake. And we have a pattern, and going back to this binary of the interventionist and the isolationist. The interventionists advocate over and over again, there's a bad guy, there's a dictator who's doing bad things to his people, and they say, let's go topple him. And you have dictators in the Middle East who are killing radical Islamic terrorists. We come in and topple them. The radical Islamic terrorists take over, and they start killing Americans. In my view, how the heck does that help us? Like, Saddam Hussein was a horrible human being. He murdered and tortured people. Unequivocally bad guy. But it got much worse after we toppled him. And you ended up having ISIS rise up. I mean, that was the cause of ISIS, was toppling Saddam Hussein. Same thing in Libya. You had Gaddafi, another horrible guy, that under Obama, we toppled him. And you ended up having radical Islamic warlords taking over. And so, and it's the question I asked in Syria. Okay, well, what's the plan? And how is this good or bad for the United States? And so I don't think, with Iran, I view Iran as very different from Iraq.
But up to that point, you say we disagree. I don't hear really anything. I'm not quite sure what happened in Syria, but I don't know. So, right. But other than that, I don't hear anything I disagree with at all.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're in a complete agreement. I wonder, though, is there a successful regime change that the United States supported that you're aware of in the last 100 years?
Sure. Defeating the Soviet Union and the Soviet Union collapsing, winning the Cold War. That was the most consequential step for U.S. national security interests of our lifetimes.
Okay.
And
so you would classify that as a regime change that we affected?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Look, you and I are in my office. We're sitting next to a painting of Reagan in front of the Brandenburg Gate. And up top are the words, "Tear down this wall," in German, in the style of the graffiti.
Right.
And I think those are the most important words any leader has said in modern times. And if you look at how Reagan waged the Cold War, and Reagan is very much my model for how to, I actually think how Reagan took on the Soviet Union is exactly how we should take on China. Now, starting from the point, look, Reagan was not an interventionist. In 8 years, the biggest country Reagan ever invaded was Grenada. He was very reluctant to use U.S. military force.
He didn't respond after the 83 barracks bombings.
You're right. Yeah, he made the judgment that the risk exceeded the benefits. And that's a very rational decision to make. And it's reflected. Trump has made those same decisions where he is willing to use military force, but he very much asks, okay, is this good or bad for America? Does this endanger U.S. servicemen and women or not? And one of the points about the Cold War, look, nobody in their right mind wanted a shooting war between America and the Soviet Union. The two biggest nuclear powers on Earth firing bullets at each other is really unhealthy for human beings. Same thing is true with China. Nobody with any sense says, hey, let's go to war with China. That's really dumb, and a whole lot of people could die. But the Cold War showed we've got lots of tools short of sending the Marines to fight against a regime. And one of the most important tools is the bully pulpit. And so when I say I support regime change, I actually think just simply laying out what the Ayatollah does. And so I spend a lot of time, I speak to Iranian dissident groups. I speak out against human rights abuses. I think shining a light on the depravity of leaders is a really powerful tool that America has.
Should we limit our activity to that?
It depends. Again,
because the U.S. government pays opposition groups, militarized opposition groups in Iran, to overthrow the government. We've done it in a lot of different places, as you know. I'm not saying it's bad, but that's very different from what you're describing. You're saying we're making a moral case, as we did for 7 years with the Soviets. Our system works, yours doesn't.
Yep.
And I think we made a credible case for that, and we beat them over 70 years economically.
And that was a huge part of it.
Right. I think everyone would agree that was the main part of it. We didn't beat them in Vietnam, or North Korea.
The main part of it, but it was tied to a military buildup. So I think it was two things. It was one, the clarity. So Reagan came in and he described the Soviet Union as an evil empire.
Right.
And all of the intelligentsia in DC, all the Democrats, all the media, they're like, what a horrible thing to say. You can't say that. Reagan went to the United Kingdom and he said, Marxism, Leninism will end up on the ash heap of history. People were horrified. They asked him, all right, what's your strategy in the Cold War? He said, very simple. We win, they lose. And that was all viewed as sort of a Philistine simplicity. And I think it was exactly right. And laying that out, speaking, do you know the backstory behind the Berlin Wall speech?
Yeah, I do. Yes.
You probably know Peter Robinson, who was the speechwriter.
Yes.
So 3 times the State Department deleted those words from that speech. And 3 times Reagan wrote it back. And the State Department argued, they said, Mr. President, you can't say this. This is too bellicose. This is too provocative. And my favorite, they said, this is too unrealistic. The Berlin Wall will stand till the end of time. And Reagan said, look, this is the whole point of the speech. And less than 3 years after Reagan gave that speech, the Berlin Wall was torn to the ground. And it wasn't knocked down by...
What's crazy about this is, like, I always knew senators, like, knew a lot about history and all that stuff. But it really seems like Ted Cruz knows a lot of stuff about history. Jesus Christ. He's saying stuff that I didn't even know happened. Bro. I'm not even going to hold you. And it kind of makes me, I'm not going to say respect him more, because, like, I kind of look at all senators like, yeah, you're a senator. I have at least a baseline level of semi-respect for them. Most of them, I guess. But it just makes me think, like, wow, you at least take this job mostly serious to just know these random historical artifacts of history, bro. It's pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie. So I'm assuming this will lead to them talking about more specifically what's happening today, because a lot of stuff is happening today, especially within the last week. It's been a lot of news about whether the U.S. is going to enter into a war, or what are we going to do regarding this, or what Trump thinks is going to happen, what Congress thinks is going to happen, this and this and this and this. And honestly, bro, I don't know what's going to happen. But I'm looking forward to at least having some level of, how do I say this? Readiness, or some level of confidence in what's going to happen, because right now we're kind of in limbo period.
American Army tanks, we didn't shoot missiles at it. It was shining truth and light that tore it down. It was also rebuilding the American military. It was what was then pejoratively called Star Wars, where the Soviet Union, their economy couldn't match our military buildup, and it bankrupted them. That's an example of peace through strength.
I wonder, I mean, is there anybody who was alive in 1989 who wouldn't trade that America for the one we live in now? There's not one person, I don't think.
Oh, sure.
But I mean, just the basic metrics, debt, suicide rate, life expectancy. I wonder why after that victory, America didn't thrive in the way that we thought that it would, that I thought that it would. My family was involved in that. I mean, we were very focused on it in my house. Like, we won. And I wonder 2 things. Why didn't the United States kind of declare victory and make some sort of arrangement with Russia that allowed, like, mutual prosperity rather than continuing a Cold War? And second, I wonder why the United States didn't get a lot better. Like, why don't we have better infrastructure? Why don't we have fewer homeless? Why do we have all these drugs? Like, if we won, why does our country look like this? I walked across from Union Station this morning, as you do, I'm sure, every day. And all those people lying in the street and sleeping outside. It's like, what is that?
We're sorry to say it, but this is not a very safe...
Really dangerous forces in our society. Some of it is politics and some of it is culture. And one of the mistakes people make in politics is thinking everything is politics. So the political answer, which I happen to believe, is we went much further down the road of liberalism. You look at Bill Clinton, who inherited the peace dividend of the Cold War being over, and moved us more to the left, and then Obama accelerated it a lot. And so there are lots of
I agree.
bad economic policies, but I also think they're cultural things. The loss of faith,
I agree with
the loss
all of
family.
that. I know what you're going to say, and I agree 100%. I bet there's not one word that I would disagree with. All I'm saying is, like, I think it's important to step back and ask.
But I actually think Russia has very little to do with it. So,
well, that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make, which is, like, we're all sort of focused on beating our adversaries abroad, but what is victory worth if our own country becomes what it is now? And maybe we're spending a little too much time focused abroad and not enough time focused on the people sleeping outside Union Station.
So, look, I absolutely think we need to focus at home.
That was a very socialist. That sounded a little socialist. That sounded a little socialist. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just a shocking thing to hear. But I kind of agree. Like, it always really confused me when we look at politics and we talk about politicians and where our money is going. And then you see homeless people sleeping outside. You see veterans who gave their life to the service can't even afford a 1-bedroom apartment after they come home from war. They can't even afford the therapy they need from having to sleep in freaking trenches on 2-day-old underwear and eat out of freaking army military grade lunch packs that only have the basic vitamins you need to survive. We don't really see too much going to them. And it always confused me, even from a young age. And I don't know a lot about like where the money in the military or where the money in the government goes, but I still don't think it's right that we just see homeless people everywhere. You can go to any major city and you'll see a conglomerate of people who are just homeless, and yet you watch the news and we're sending $200 billion overseas. I don't know.
Emphatically, and we need to focus on prosperity. We need to focus on reducing the debt, reducing spending, empowering people, low taxes, small businesses. American free enterprise. It's the most powerful force for fighting poverty the world has ever seen. I'm 1,000% there. I also recognize it is a dangerous world, and part of the responsibility of leaders, part of President Trump's responsibility, is to keep America safe. Let's go back to where we started.
But can I ask, you've been in the district a long time in D.C., so have I, and the city's way more dangerous, and Congress runs this city.
No, it's a complete crap hole.
So I'm saying, like, no Iranian's ever going to kill me, but I could get carjacked here. And I just don't understand how the Congress could run this city and focus on the dangers of Iran when the city is like garbage. Okay. It's garbage.
But Congress doesn't run the city. We could.
Congress does run the city. It's in the Constitution.
It's in the Constitution, but they've given home rule, so it's a Democrat mayor.
You can take it back. You control the Congress.
I'd vote for it, but it is a question of math.
Okay, but I'm just saying, like, why? How can people ignore? It's like if my own kids are drug addicts, but I'm focused on my neighbor's kids. It's like I'm neglecting my own kids, and there's a sense in which the Congress is neglecting the country that elected them in favor of this relentless focus on other people's problems. That's the way it feels as an American.
Look, there are lots of problems in America that we need to fix. Why is D.C. a pit? Because you have a mayor and a Democrat city council that won't let police officers arrest bad guys. And in every city you see across the country, whether it's New York, whether it's Chicago, whether it's L.A., whether it's San Francisco, if you have Democrats, we see the L.A. riots where they won't let people be arrested. All right.
Then why not work in regime change here? Why not use the bully pulpit?
I do. What do you think I do every day? And
I never see a Republican senator stand up and say, I just walked to work this morning over people dying of drug ODs. We're going to shut this place down unless they fix it. They're mad about Putin. Like, what did Putin do to Washington? Nothing.
Look, in terms of regime change, let's talk this week. The riots in L.A., I've made very clear that the cause of those riots are Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass. And when you elect communists who hate America, who stop law enforcement from arresting criminals, you get what you get on the street.
Amen, I agree.
My in-laws are Californians, and they're wonderful people. Heidi grew up on the Central Coast of California. And I remember I was texting with my mother-in-law, and I think I sent her a video of criminals going into a store and just looting in California. And her response, she said something like, well, this is really terrible. I wish we could, it's a shame we can't do anything about this. I said, yes, you can. Go in and arrest them. Throw their butts in jail, put them in handcuffs, 100%. And it stops.
Exactly.
And so we know how to fix these things. And D.C. is, I think D.C. voted, if I remember right, 92% Democrat. Democrat policies don't work, and they destroy every community that they are in charge.
Time out. I have to throw the flag on the play. I have to say this, and y'all can disagree with me all you want. But one of the most dangerous states in the United States is a super Republican state. Arkansas. I don't even think Arkansas has any blue cities. I may be wrong, but they are one of the most dangerous, most homicidal places in the country, and they are super red. Super red. And the reason I bring this up is because Ted Cruz is trying to frame it as Democrats just don't know what they're doing, which he does have a good point. A lot of blue cities do have a lot of crime. I say that. But I would actually attribute crime more so to poverty than anything. I think a poor Republican and a poor Democrat probably have the same chances of robbing someone. I don't know though. I don't know all the details behind it, but I'm just looking at the numbers. Like, some of the most homicidal places are really red. Some of them are really blue too. I'm not saying it negates it. It's both. Like, they're both red. They're both red and blue. But one thing that they do have in common is that they're pretty broke relative to other places. So I don't think it's just that Democrat places are just terrible with crime. Nah.
Then why don't Republicans assert their constitutional authority over the city? Don't they control the Congress?
Yes, I'd be all for it.
Who's against it? Do you think?
Susan Collins is really vocally against it. So on questions of home rule, so for example, let's take an issue you and I care a lot about, the COVID lockdowns. I had a couple of years ago in the middle of them. DC was proposing, the DC school district was proposing throwing out of school any child that was not vaccinated. And at the time, if I remember correctly, it was something like 40% of the African-American students in DC were not vaccinated. So we're talking about literally throwing out 40% of the kids at public school. And so I had a vote on the Senate floor to say, look, they can't throw kids out of school for this. And we ended up having a big argument, and part of the argument was home rule, where there was, and Susan was the most vocal Republican that's like, no, we have to let DC run. And I'm like, why? Constitution gives us the power to do it. And it ended up, by the way, every single Democrat, all of them, voted in favor of the DC public schools being able to throw out 40% of the black kids from school. And I said, look, you throw a kid out of school, you got a 14, 15-year-old boy, you throw him out of school, you know what's going to happen next. He's going to join a gang, he's going to engage in crimes, he's going to engage in drugs. He could be dead within 5 years if that kid doesn't get an education. And the Democrats were more than happy to say, we don't care. Right now, our religion is get the vaccine or to hell with you.
Wait, actually, I was kind of wrong. If you look at Arkansas, and I admit it, I looked it up. Arkansas has a lot of crime, but the most dangerous parts of Arkansas are Pine Bluff and Little Rock, Arkansas. And those are leaning liberal. So, I don't know. Ted Cruz might have been right, because he might have been right with that one. I'm not going to lie. Even if you look at a place like that is a Republican state, their cities are pretty liberal, and the cities have a lot of crime. So, hey, I was wrong. Let's get back to it.
Can you see, once again, I couldn't agree with you more, but can you feel the frustration of people, including your voters, every American, at the emphasis on foreign countries and the threat we supposedly face, a lot of which is fake, obviously, over the kind of slowly unfolding tragedy of what's happening to our country. The dollars spent, the aid packages to Ukraine to pay the retirement of civil servants in a country that we have nothing to do with, the endless support for Israel, very expensive, when people are literally buying groceries on credit in the United States. Can you feel like it's nothing against Ukraine or Israel or any other country?
All right, let's stop. You said the support for Israel, very expensive. How much support do we give to Israel?
Well, you tell me, you vote for it.
Yeah, it's about $3 billion a year is the military assistance.
Is that the only assistance?
Yeah, we just have military assistance. Israel does not have additional assistance. There's an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, and it's $3 billion a year.
So what is it costing to support the bombing campaign to protect Israel right now from Iran?
So I don't know right now, but I'll tell you this. Let's go back to the touchstone on foreign policy, American interest. Our support, our military support for Israel is massively in America's national security
Well, what
interest,
does it
and
cost?
it benefits us enormously.
Well, before we can make independent judgments about whether or not that's true, and I'm certainly open to it, I think we need to know what it costs. So what's the annual cost of defending Israel? Do you know?
$3 billion a year.
No, that's the aid. But I mean, the cost of the weapons, for example, the cost of U.S. personnel there, the cost of moving ships to the region, which we're doing right now, the cost of moving tankers to the region, all of that. Do we know what the cost is?
So look, the last week, I don't know. And there's some lag when the administration, under the Constitution, the commander-in-chief has control of the armed forces. And so President Trump has made some decisions that we'll know the cost over time, but I don't know the last week. I don't have visibility on that. The annual cost is $3 billion. It's a 10-year memorandum of understanding, and that's the principal driver of the cost. But let me make a point. We get massive benefits from Israel. Israel shares the Mossad is one of the best intelligence sources on the planet. The enemies of Israel, the people who hate Israel, they all hate us. It's almost a perfect overlap. And so if we tried to recreate, if we're just trying to defend America, we tried to recreate the national security benefits of our alliance with Israel, it would cost, I don't know, $30 billion, $300 billion.
So can you elaborate? And again, I'm going into this as someone who's always liked Israel and still does. But I also think at this point, given where we are, it's fair to ask rational questions about what the benefits are.
Good.
So does Mossad share all of its intelligence with us?
Oh, probably not, but they share a lot. We don't share all of our intelligence with them, but we share a lot. It's a close alliance.
Do they spy domestically in the United States?
Oh, they probably do, and we do as well. And friends and allies spy on each other. And I assume all of our allies spy on us.
And that's okay with you?
You know what? One of the things about being a conservative is that you're not naive and utopian. You don't think humans are all... Part of the reason socialism doesn't work is the mantra from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs doesn't work. As a conservative, I assume people act in their rational self-interest.
So it's conservative to pay people to spy on you?
It's conservative to recognize that human beings act in their own self-interest, and every one of our friends spies on us, and I'm not...
Do you like it? That's my question. I'm not asking whether they have motive to do it. Of course they do. I understand that. And by the way, I'm not mad at them, but you're an American lawmaker, so I just want to know, hold on, I want to know your attitude. Yeah. You said that your guiding principle, in fact, the only principle, the only criterion.
I said guiding, the overwhelming, I wouldn't say only.
Is it in America's interest? Is it in America's interest for Israel to spy on us, including on the president?
It is in America's interest to be closely allied with Israel because we get huge benefits for it. And you want to see the clearest...
But I just want to stop on the spying for a second. That it takes place, as you know, and including on the president of the United States and several presidents. And I just want to know if that's okay and why is it okay? Wouldn't an American lawmaker say to a client state, you're not allowed to spy on us? I'm sorry. I know why you want to. I'm not mad at you, but you're not allowed to.
Sure.
And I don't care for it. I don't want to be spied on by you. It's kind of weird not to say that, but you don't seem able to say that.
Sure, I would say don't spy on us. They're going to anyway. And by the way, the Brits are, the Canadians are. I don't think...
I get what Ted Cruz is saying. Yes, I get what he's saying because at the end of the day, let's be realistic. If another country's central intelligence wants to spy on you, they're going to, in some way, shape, or form, spy on you. In America, probably, I'm not going to say we do it. We probably do the same. Allegedly, we spy. Nonetheless, I also get what Tucker Carlson is saying, though. He's saying that just because you know it's happening doesn't mean you have to completely ignore it. Of course, if you're a professor at a college... You probably know some students cheat on your test, or your not test, but some students cheat in your class. You probably know that, but that doesn't mean you should be like, oh, well, okay, whatever. No, you should still try to make sure they don't do it. But if someone happens to do it, then they happen to do it against your wishes, though, against your actions, though. You can make it extremely hard to happen, and that's what Tucker Carlson's saying. He's not saying that, he's not saying that, you should be 100% against this and you should just make sure it doesn't happen at all. No, he's saying that even though you know it's happening, even though it's going to happen, you should at least make it harder for the people who are spying on you.
Well, I'm not for that at all. I think it's disgusting, but we don't actually pay their, we're not their most meaningful sponsor. We're not sort of paying for the operations of the British government.
So I gotta say, and this is, it's weird. we're talking about isolationists, the obsession with Israel. Why is Israel?
Oh, I don't think I'm obsessed with Israel.
Okay, but I think a lot of people are. And like the question, Israel spies on us. Well, so does every other country. Why are you mad at Israel?
I guess. Oh, no. I'm hardly the one I've never taken money from the Israel lobby. Have you?
Taken money from the Israel.
From AIPAC.
So AIPAC raises a lot of money for me, but it's actually a misnomer because the people who raise money are individuals. Right. So it's not the PAC itself, but they're individual members who believe in the American-Israeli friendship and relationship. Is AIPAC
a foreign lobby?
No, it's an American lobby. It's the AIPAC stands for the America-Israeli Political Action Committee.
What does it lobby for?
So, to be honest, not a whole lot effectively. Listen, I came into Congress 13 years ago with the stated intention of being the leading defender of Israel in the United States Senate.
Great.
And I've worked every day to do that. AIPAC, a lot of times, AIPAC, I wish were much more effective. Like, there are folks online who are in the fever swamp of terrified of AIPAC, and AIPAC...
I'm not terrified of AIPAC at all. You're the one who seems a little uncomfortable when I'm asking.
No, not uncomfortable at all.
I'm just asking what AIPAC does. My understanding, having known a lot of people who went to AIPAC, is that it lobbies on behalf of the Israeli government.
Wrong.
Oh, okay. When was the last time AIPAC took a position that deviated from Prime Minister Netanyahu?
All the time.
Name one.
Okay. Let me go back and give a little history. If you want to do a deep dive on AIPAC,
I don't. I want to do a shallow dive that gets.
No.
I want to get to the core question. AIPAC is lobbying for a foreign government, and I don't. It's not.
No.
It's lobbying for the United States.
It is lobbying for a strong U.S.-Israeli relationship.
Okay. So it's not has nothing to do with the foreign government.
It wants America and Israel to be closely allied.
Okay, but it's lobbying on behalf of the interests of another country.
So that's not true at all. And if
it's not true.
No.
How much contact do you think AIPAC leaders have with the government of Israel?
No idea. I imagine some. I think the government of Israel is often frustrated with AIPAC because AIPAC's not nearly strong enough.
Do you think there's any coordination between the government of Israel and AIPAC?
Do they talk? Sure. If you're lobbying for more U.S.-Mexico trade, would you talk to people in the U.S. and Mexico and the government? Sure. Like if...
So I'm not mad about that. There are a million countries that lobby Washington. I like a lot of those countries, including Israel.
But AIPAC are Americans. They're not Israelis.
Hold on. There are tons of Americans who lobby on behalf of foreign governments. I know them. I'm related to some of them. I know how it works. I'm from here. So my question is not, is it outrageous that foreign governments lobby the United States? They all do, okay, including Israel. My only question is, why don't we admit that is what's happening? You're denying it, but it's true.
Yeah, and why
aren't they registered as a foreign lobby?
Because they're not.
They're not a foreign lobby.
No, they're not. And this is that there's a fever swamp. Look,
it's not a fever swamp. These are very reasonable questions, and you've accused me of being obsessed with Israel, which I'm not.
I actually haven't. I've said
isolationist. And being feverish about it, which I'm not at all. I find it's a very tender spot when you ask it, and I don't know why.
So, Tucker, all right, let's go back. I was first elected to the Senate in 2012. I came in Obama's second term. And I actually saw
one thing I do like about politicians is that they rarely ever directly answer any questions. And I want you to notice, as this interview goes on, he's rarely going to just answer a question like just directly. It's actually pretty impressive how he's able to do that so efficiently.
PAC be badly wounded in a way they never came back from. And the second term is when Obama did the Iran nuclear deal. And the Iran nuclear deal, I think, was catastrophic. And AIPAC went all in lobbying against it.
Yeah.
And they failed. And I was the leading opponent of the Iran nuclear deal.
Oh, I know. They definitely failed, yes.
They failed. And what happened, the Obama White House told every Democrat, when I got here, there used to be real bipartisan support for Israel. That has largely disappeared. And it's the Obama nuclear deal that caused it, because the Obama White House told every Democrat, pick. You either stand with Israel or you're a Democrat and you stand with the Obama White House. And almost every single Democrat member of Congress said, I'm a Democrat first, to hell with Israel. And then I watched as AIPAC, every one of those Democrats got reelected and AIPAC did nothing about it. And it dramatically reduced AIPAC's influence.
I agree. I watched it happen.
And by the way, I told AIPAC, I said, look, the analogy, if the NRA was supporting a bunch of politicians and cared about the Second Amendment, and you had politicians that vote to confiscate people's guns, and the NRA turned around and raised money for the people who voted to confiscate guns, You know what? No one would ever care what they said again.
So you're making the case that AIPAC is not as powerful as people say it is, and I completely agree with you. I've watched that, and I'm not making the case that AIPAC is all powerful and they're running everything and putting fluoride in the water. I'm not making that case at all, because that's not true. I'm only trying to get to the question of what AIPAC is, and I don't think you're being straightforward about it. AIPAC is lobbying on behalf of the interests of a foreign country, and they're not registered. And you're saying, no, that's not true. You're saying that they don't coordinate with the Israeli government.
Of course, I coordinate. They talk with them. I don't know what they do. I can tell you.
But why don't you care? Isn't it meaningful if a foreign government...
Hey, I talk with Israel all the time.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
Foreign countries all the time.
But the law is, and a lot of people have been prosecuted under this law, that if you are lobbying on behalf of foreign government, you must register. That's it. It's really simple. And I don't know why, if I'm working for Malaysia or Qatar or Belgium, and I'm working on behalf of its government's interests through a group of Americans who are representing the friendship between those two nations, I have to register under the Foreign Agent Registration Act. And if I don't, I can go to jail. And people have gone to jail, including people I know.
Okay.
So I don't understand why we don't just be honest and say they're lobbying on behalf of a foreign government. They're coordinating with the government. You know that that's true.
That is not only not true, that is false.
They're not coordinating with the Israeli government?
Do you know how AIPAC raises money?
What?
For elected officials, like what they do, like what the actual mechanics is?
I get it. I mean, they go to people who are sympathetic to Israel and raise money and then send it to candidates who agree with them.
So what they'll do is, so in my last election, AIPAC endorsed me. And they'll host a fundraiser. And they'll host a fundraiser in Dallas or Houston or Atlanta or New York or LA. And they'll do a fundraiser and they'll get someone who will host it. And it's usually a business owner, lawyer, doctor, or someone who hosts it. And you'll get typically at an AIPAC fundraiser, 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 people who live in that city.
Right.
Who care about a strong U.S.-Israel relationship.
Yeah.
And if they have,
So he has like a partnership with them or something. He gets paid like an annual salary from AIPAC. How much money are they giving you, Ted Cruz? How much money are they giving you? Because he seems very open with AIPAC, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm kind of putting that the right way, but and I don't know a lot about AIPAC, but I don't really trust the stuff that he's saying too much right here. And the reason I don't is because he's putting he put a lot of money behind it, and when you put a lot of money behind something, I know how it can get. It can get very serious, I guess. I don't know. But there's one clip I specifically want to go over. And it's about Iran. And I'm going to go over this because this video is getting really long. And I need y'all to see this clip, bro. So let's not waste any more time.
Living around, by the way.
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people living around?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah.
How could you not know that?
It's not
even. You don't know anything about Iran. So
okay, I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who
don't know anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump.
I'm not saying that.
Which is, if you allow it, you will encourage more of it.
This is a very serious, and now I kind of understand the weight and the seriousness of this video, because if you're in partnerships with Iran so aggressively, if that's what you stand for to be with, why, if that's your partnership, if that's what you stand with, and they're actively going against Iran, like you stand with Israel and they're going against Iran, and you don't know anything about them, it kind of makes it hard to trust you, because at the end of the day, you're trying to topple a country you don't even know anything about. And it kind of seems like you're doing it for money.
How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people living around?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah.
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay, this is cute.
It's not even... You don't know anything about Iran. So
Okay,
actually, the
I am not
country-
the Tucker Carlson
No, but
expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the
you're one who
overthrow of the
claims-
government.
You're the
and
one
you
who
don't know
claims
anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump.
No,
You're the
I'm
one
not saying that.
who can't figure out
I'm
if it was
saying
a good
you
idea
don't
to kill
believe-
General Soleimani, and you said it was
don't
bad.
believe they're trying to murder Trump.
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really
we
believe
are
that,
carrying out military strikes today.
you said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said we. Israel is leading them, but we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive
No,
capacity.
we're not
at all.
bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
We are supporting
This is
Israel.
high stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war
we're-
with Iran right now, people are listening.
Okay.
That is kind of breaking news. I'm not gonna lie. Ted Cruz got cooked here. He got cooked. He really did get cooked. If you side with him, let me know. But my name is LFR Jojo. I'm gonna end this here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.